All right, so good evening. My name is Rashad Tyler. I am a manager here at Southern California Edison, and I will be presenting for you our 2023 SCE Reliability Review. Now, what that has to do with is really, it gives you partly some information about our annual reliability report that we submit. That usually happens in July, which we submit our 2023 report. So the goal here will get you at least familiar with some of the information that might be in there and really what is an outage, all the way down to what are the resources that you can utilize to gain better information about reliability in your particular area. So welcome, and we'll go ahead and jump in and get started. By the way, so throughout the presentation, you might have some questions. If you do, feel free to put those into the Q&A section. Make sure we won't be answering questions throughout the presentation. We'll wait until the very end and cover those particular questions. But again, any presentation questions that you may have, feel free to throw those in a Q&A at any point. All right. So we're going to go forward now. Let's see here. All right, so here are our topics for the day. So first, we will cover safety, since that is a priority here at SCE. We'll give you an overview of Southern California Edison, the company itself. We'll talk about what is an outage. We want to make sure that's very clear. We'll talk about some of the common sort of definitions for reliability that we have and metrics that we use to measure reliability. We'll talk about some of the performance that we have put into our annual reliability reports. And then we'll also get into some of the improvements that we've done across 2023, and then really how can you utilize the reports that we have available to address reliability. My apologies, I'm not sharing my screen here. All right, so here are all the topics I just covered. My apologies for that. All right, so we'll keep it going. So safety. So in terms of safety, that's our top priority. So we want to make sure we're taking all the right precautions to protect you all, our customers, our communities, and even just our employees. Electricity has become a big part of our lives, and we have to realize it's also a hazard. So we just want to make sure that we're safeguarding our customers. Even as we become, a cleaner energy company, and then we have a cleaner energy future, we want to make sure everyone is safe while doing so. So this really transitions well into our next slide about down power lines. So commonly, you can see sometimes you'll be driving, you'll see some poles that are up, some wooden poles, as you see in this picture here, and then you might see some lines. Hopefully you don't see a down line, but sometimes during dangerous conditions, like if there's high Santa Ana winds, stormy weather, you might end up seeing a down power line. The main thing is don't approach it, don't touch it, and don't touch anything else that's in contact with it, with the down power line. Water also conducts electricity, so you want to make sure you don't touch or step in water that's near a down power line. And don't take it into your own hands and try to use a fire extinguisher to spray it on the down power line. A good thing to do is, it says stay 100 feet away, stay as far as you can away, right, from that power line, and make sure that you're calling 911 immediately. So that is our safety topic. All right, now I'll give you a quick overview of SCE, the company. So I won't go through every bullet that's here. The main, I think, key points is that Southern California Edison is a subsidiary of Edison International. Really, we're one of the nation's largest electric utilities. Been around quite a bit of time, about 130 years. And then we're regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission, and then also portions of it are regulated by also the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC. If you look over here on the map on the right side here, you can see sort of this canary, or this is more like a yellow color. That's our service area that we cover. That's roughly 50,000 square miles that we cover, and it's mainly Southern California, and then you have some central areas and also the coastal areas. So we really have a mixture of different areas that we serve. That's roughly 15 million residents and roughly 5 million customer accounts, or those people who have bills with us, so to say. And then if you look here, this is really about 15 counties and almost 200 cities, and also even some Native American tribes. So we cover a vast area. So we want to make sure that, we're doing as much we can for the area that we do serve here. So a little bit about the grid. I don't want to get too technical on everyone, but it's good that you understand at least the information that's presented here. Our goal is to make sure that we're delivering reliable, affordable power and that it's also safe. To do that, it's not always so simple, but you have to start with the fact that there's probably three, let's say, primary areas of the power grid. First, you want to start with the generation. So you need to make the power first, right? Or generate the power. So you need to first make that power. And once you do, usually you might be making it in a place that's in a desert or somewhere else that's off-site, and you have to transmit it over long distances. So you're going to have to use transmission lines. You have to step up the power and you have to transmit it over long distances so that you can get it to a point where the end-use customer can use it. And the end-use customer is connected to the distribution system. So I'll follow on the map here. This is the generation. You make the power, you transmit it over long distances, then you have to do some things with it to reduce the voltage and then get it down to a level that the residential customers can use, a small business can use, or even like a commercial entity can use, or even a farm. That's all on the distribution. So we've gone over that. So what is an outage? So really an outage is a temporary, or it can be an unexpected loss of electricity. But we have different types of outages. They're not all the same. We have a maintenance outage first. That's shown sort of here in this, I'm going to call it aqua. So that's really when you have a scheduled outage that we would notify you as the customer that we need to take an outage. We do that in advance. We need to take an outage, 3 weeks from now on this particular date for this particular time. This is really to do the work that we need to do to upgrade our equipment. So it can help improve actually your reliability. Another type of outage that we have that's shown in the center here is a rotating outage. A rotating outage also could be called a rolling blackout. I know we haven't probably heard as much about that as, lately. I know we've heard that more in the past, but it's more of a last resort. It's more of a statewide condition, like an Energy Emergency Alert 3 that, in order for, to promote the sanctity, I'll say, of the grid as a whole, that we're going to have to take, like outages in areas and roll it around to different areas just to promote really a safe and reliable system. And then you might hear about a repair outage. So these are the unexpected outages that we have. Maybe you have a traffic accident that's hit a pole or hit some of our equipment, or maybe a piece of equipment has failed. In these particular cases, you're going to have to do a repair before you can restore the power. And that's what you call a repair outage. Our goal is always to get these restored quickly, but you do have to assess the damage, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well in a slide or two. Now, one type of outage that you might hear about, which is a little bit outside of the three that we just mentioned, is public safety power shutoff. This is really a preventative measure. So I think everyone knows the threat of wildfires in California has been growing. In terms of our territory, about a quarter of our territory is in a high-risk fire area. So we have, an obligation to keep our community safe by preventing a wildfire. And we don't want our equipment to be part of that or to cause an ignition. So what we'll do is we'll notify, our customers and say, hey, we need to temporarily shut off the power due to a dangerous weather condition. Maybe it could be very high Santa Ana winds because we don't want our lines to go down and become a source of ignition. We really see this as a measure of last resort, to keep you safe. We don't want you to have the outage, but we also want to make sure that there are no, ignitions or wildfires that start in your particular area that's due to at least our system. All right, so how can I be informed about outages? Well, we have an outage center. If you go onto SCE.com, you can click on Outage Center. It is a great way to get more information about outages. I've used it personally to report an outage. I use it to find out, I've had an outage and I want to find out when my power would be restored. You can also look on there and see all the different types of outages that they have. Is there a maintenance outage in my area? Is it a repair outage? There's an outage map that's pretty interactive that you can utilize as well. And then I think it's good to be able to use the website too, because you can go on and sign up for different types of alerts. so you can get alerts to your phone about things that are going on. There's also a lot of good tips and other things that you can get if you visit the website as well, and some information on programs that we might cover as well later on. So I would say, the website is a great asset that you can use to gain more information about what's going on, especially outage related. All right, so the next two slides really talk about what is our process for restoring power. So I'm going to do this in the context of an unplanned outage or a repair outage that we talked about earlier. So in order to restore the power, you need a team to go out and you need them to figure out, how can we safely and quickly restore your power? And no outage is the same. Every outage is very different in how they occur, what caused the outage, the extent of the damage. So you really need to go assess the damage and figure out what needs to be done in order to repair that. So, a three-step process that's used, or three phases that are used to restore, is first, as I was mentioning, you want to go out and assess and protect. So you want to send some very highly trained electrical workers out, and you want them to locate the issue, and then you want them to isolate the issue, right? And then, de-energize it so it's not an issue for the public or any of the workers. Then what you're going to do is focus on repairing the damage. That's phase two. So now that you found out where the damage is, you need to send out a crew that's going to, put the right equipment out, replace any damaged equipment. The next thing that you'd have to do is then focus on restoration of the power. So you've completed the repair, but now you need to safely restore all the power to all the different neighborhoods. So it's a three-stage process. We take it very seriously. We're trying to use more technologies that help us, figure out, where the issues are so that we can restore power quickly. That's really the end goal. All right, so for the customers here, in terms of reliability, there's a few different ways that we define reliability. We use things that we call indices or metrics to measure reliability. If you want to think about it in simple terms, reliability is about having dependable electricity when you need it. So that's the simple way, right? Is my power on when I need it, when I need to go to work, when I need to charge my vehicles, and so forth. So how do we measure system reliability? So on this slide, what you're going to find is, four different magical colors here, but you'll see here, you've got SAIDI, it's pronounced SAIDI. It stands for System Average Interruption Duration Index. You've got SAIFI, which is System Average Interruption Frequency Index, and then you've got CAIDI, Customer Average Interruption Duration Index. Now, these are actually shown as formulas. I'm not going to get into the formulas. Why I'm stopping on the first three is these are all sustained metrics. What does a sustained metric mean? It's one in which the outage has to be more than 5 minutes long. Any outage that's less than 5 minutes, equal to or less than 5 minutes, would be considered a momentary. So these are about sustained outages greater than 5 minutes. So SAIDI really is about how long is my service unexpectedly, let's just say, interrupted in a given year on average. So this really looks at the entire customer base. Let's say the 5 million, customers that we mentioned or so earlier. It looks at that whole base and says, on average, what is the average customer experience? Is that 60 minutes on average per year or 90 minutes on average per year? SAIFI is really gets away from duration. It's more about frequency or the number of times the average customer experiences an outage. So is that 1 or 2 times a year? That's what that boils down to. And then CAIDI's a little bit different. CAIDI is about duration as well, like SAIDI, but it's really about for the customers that actually experienced a sustained interruption or an outage that was greater than 5 minutes. What was the average time it took for power to be restored to them? So the difference between CAIDI and SAIDI is about the people who actually experienced outages and what the duration was. SAIDI is about, if I look at all the customers across the system, what was the average amount of time, whether they had an outage or not, what's the average amount of time that they were out of power? The last one here is MAIFI. It's sort of similar to SAIFI because it's about frequency or how many times, but it's again focused on the momentary side. So how many times was my power interrupted momentarily over a year on average? So if you think of it that way, just think of the ones with the D in them as duration-based indexes, and then the one with F as, or measures, are really just the frequency based or how many times. This is important because as you read the annual reliability report, you're going to want to know, what do these particular metrics mean? And they're all across the report itself. All right, so this is going to give you just a little bit of a snippet of some of the information that's in the annual reliability report, but it'll really give you the basis for how you can go about reading the rest of the information that's in there with the information that I've just given you. So here's an example of a particular trend that's in the annual reliability report that was published in July of this year. So this is really a 10-year history. I'm going to go over what the chart represents. So this is the SCE chart. And it's only for unplanned outages, this particular one, and excludes MEDs. And if you want to read more about what that means, notes that at the bottom of the slide here. And I won't really get into, but basically we have to exclude out certain days because, it's beyond a typical day, essentially. If you look here on the left side, this is what I'm going to call the vertical axis or the y-axis. And this is SCE, and this is in minutes. Along the x-axis or the horizontal axis is years. And it's, really spanning from 2014 to 2023 is what you can see here. And what we have here is, if you look here, we have different trend lines. So this first one is the system. It's more of a royal blue, I'll call it. It's, in this case, it's this top one here. So this is the overall system. What is the SCE? So if I were to look at 2021, I would say, I'm guessing here because I can't see here, maybe it's about 103 minutes or so, versus if you look in 2023, that's under 100 minutes. Maybe it's closer to 95 or so. You can see that's the system-wide. The next one is sort of the aqua. That's the distribution system only. This is an important point. The system reliability is usually driven by the distribution system or the outages that are occurring on the distribution system. The transmission system has some different redundancy in it, which you don't usually see as much impact due to transmission outages. And you could have a transmission outage that doesn't result in an outage to customers. So you can see there's a very close resemblance. Whatever distribution does, sort of the system does. And then the last one is transmission. You can see the impact is much lower in terms of minutes here. And then these dotted lines represent, the colors are the same. Darker blue is system. The lighter dotted blue, dotted aqua line is more about distribution. It's just a trend line that was drawn in. So if you look at overall, it looks like it's gone down a little bit. We have gone down since 2021 in terms of SCE, and our goal is to try to continue to drive that number down. So I think I've given you at least a basis for at least how to read these. They're all very similar. This one is a little bit different. It's just SAFE. So SAFE is in the number of sort of times or interruptions that customers had on average. So we're looking at minutes on SAFE. This is like the number of interruptions. So you can see, it's easier to read it if I just go to scale. In 2016, the average per customer was like 1 interruption if you look at the entire system. But you can see we're also trying to head towards, reducing this value as well. Similar chart here. You can see KD over time has sort of been reducing. In this particular one, KD looks a little bit higher, but still KD doesn't have, while the transmission line goes up, the amount of customers associated with this particular, let's say, event or events, might have had longer durations and a large amount of customers impacted, but still compared to the system, it was it wasn't as impactful. And that's why you'll still see the system closely follows the distribution trend. And then here's the MAFE. Remember, this is focusing on sort of the momentary outages. And again, on this particular one, this is about the number of outages that were less than or equal to 5 minutes on average. And you can see by 2021, it was up and we're down from there. Went a little up from the previous year, but we're hoping to, continue to drive that down as well. So anyway, I've armed you with some information that you can utilize to, further look at a lot of the other trends that are in the annual reliability report. The annual reliability report presents a lot of information, and a lot of it is really at like a macro sort of level. So we'll talk a little bit more about some other reports that we have out there that might give a little more information to our customers on what's happening maybe in their local areas. Another part of the report that I'll mention, but won't show any slides on, is we also have our worst performing circuits that are noted in the report. A circuit is just a line that we have on our distribution system that may serve a community. So it talks about the worst 1% of both SAIDI and SAFE. So that information is publicly available within the reports as well. And then one thing that you'll see in our reports as well is a sort of a breakdown of causes. So every outage has a different sort of driver or cause. It's not always the same. And the extent is always different. How many customers were impacted, how long it was. You can see here, this is a pie chart. The total pie represents 100%. And you can see here's a key at the bottom below that tells you the different cause types. The only one I'll explain here is probably T/S is like more like transmission and then substation. And if you look here, this 30.7% out of 100% is operation. So sometimes we're going to find we go out and there's an issue in the field. It may not have resulted in outage yet, but we need to isolate the system because it's a problem that needs to be repaired. So we'll take an operations type outage. But we can see overhead equipment accounts for 23.2%, whereas underground equipment accounts for 12.2%. Again, this is all at the system level. So, you could have different local trends, or in your community. And then here you'll see even third party plays a part, or even animal plays a part. Third party could be, someone hitting a pole and so forth, or other equipment, or digging into a line that has nothing to do with Edison. It's just a third party. So anyway, just some helpful information so you can understand where, what's the source of some of the outages that are happening across the system itself. All right, so now we get into some of the improvements that we've made in 2023. So, as a whole, SCE plans to spend about $5 billion each year to maintain, improve, and even just harden our infrastructure. So if you look along the left side here, the areas that we're really focusing on are, infrastructure reliability. So we're replacing equipment so that we can improve our reliability, like cable, our poles, our switches. We're doing some wildfire mitigation. We're trying to harden our infrastructure to limit ignitions and the risk of wildfires. We're also doing some transmission work, which will help us connect more renewables. Also install, some of the subs that we need to serve some of our load and updating some of our key lines. But also getting, the grid ready. So how do we get it ready as we put on new technologies? As you put new technologies into your home and business, what do we need to do to prepare the system for that? And then really, how do we support long-term energy policy, like bringing in more energy storage, or even, whatever's going on with electric vehicles. We imagine there's going to be more electric vehicles over time and renewables. So a lot of what we're doing is in support of that. You can also see a breakdown of all of the work we actually did in 2023 here, and I won't go through each one of them, but a lot of work is being done. Next, I'll cover the worst performing circuit program. So as I mentioned in the annual reliability report, in our SCE annual reliability report for 2023, we listed the top 1% of circuits that were for SAIDI and for SAFE. So remember, for the worst 1% on per average for duration, and then per average for frequency or the number of outages. So that information's been put in there, and we've also talked about where we may have some existing projects or plans in place. Where we don't, we try to create new projects so that we can put the right interventions in place to try to improve the reliability on these circuits over time. Again, our goal is that we don't want it to continue to be one of the top 1%. We want to improve the reliability on the circuits and then continue to go down the list and improve the reliability across the system. There's some more technical ways in which we calculate that using like a 3-year average, because we want to make sure it's not just a one-time thing or 1-year thing, but that information is also provided within the annual reliability report in detail on how we determine that. So capital improvement map. So we have a capital improvement map that's available to the public. And with this presentation that we'll post on our website, you'll be able to use this to get to this particular site. And you can really go see all the different work that we have going on in your area. You can really zoom into your area. If you live in Riverside, or if you live in wherever it may be, San Gabriel, you can sort of zoom into the area itself. and then you can find out what's the work that's going on. So it's a helpful tool. It's really important for us to continue to improve the grid, but at the same time, like, how do we ensure that we're doing the most we can for the grid at the least cost to the customer? So affordability is important for us. So we want to be reliable, so we got to balance that, but we also have to think about how do we do things better to be more affordable. So that's always in our mind, and that's our commitment to you as our customers. Also, there's ways that we look to help our customers, especially if you're facing some challenges with bills and so forth. We have sort of discounted rates, we have some assistance options, but even if you're not facing challenges with your bills, but you want to find ways to save money, we have other programs like our demand response. There's rebates and other incentives out there for other things that you may be doing or purchases that you may make that you may want to look into. The website, SCE.com, is a great resource to help you with that. So please utilize it. All right, now the good part, how to obtain reliability reports. All right, so we have actually, as a company, we have two types of reports that we provide. We provide an annual report, which is what we've been talking about, and that gives you a really macro level or high level view of the reliability across the SCE service area, right? And it digs in a little bit underneath that and talks about like the worst performing circuits and maybe some other subsections of our service area. But that's as far as it goes. And it has a few other details in there too for some key events. But if you're really interested in what's going on in your community, we also publish annually city reliability reports. Now, they're not published at the same time necessarily. They still might be around the same time. Sometimes it could be around June or so or July, but we put those on our SCE.com as well. So there's a path that's here. It's SCE, outage center, and then reliability report. So we'll provide this in the presentation, so you'll have a link to it if you've never visited that before. But we have over 240 sort of, we'll call them city reliability presentations, but it really includes cities, unincorporated areas, even tribal governments. We have a lot of different areas that are in here, and we publish the report separately for there. And they're updated annually, and they give sort of usually like a 3-year or so view too of your reliability for the area. If you look in that report, you might see a listing of circuits. So you can see, and I'll show you on the next screen, you might see a list of circuits that serve your particular city, or at least cross into your particular city. You can see what their performance is using the metrics we talked about or indices we talked about earlier, SAIDI, SAIFI, CAIDI, or MAFI. So you can see some of those metrics. You can see breakdowns in terms of percentages of causes. And then you can also use the same link is provided for the capital improvement plans that we discussed on a previous slide here. But it's a wealth of information for our customers. If you look here, this is an example of the circuit map that's provided within the actual presentation. So in this particular example, you can see along the right side here, it lists the city and it lists the year of the report. And it lists all the distribution circuits sort of at that time. So you can see, I can see this one more clearly. This one says the K circuit, but you can see if you know roughly what area you live in, you might be able to tell which one of the circuits that you have in this particular community. And then you can go to the appendices within this particular presentation. You can find out, what the reliability looks like compared to other circuits in that city, or even compared to the city as a whole. So it's definitely a wealth of information and a good starting point to understand what circuits may be in your community and what your reliability may be like for the area. So I've given you a lot of information and I did it really quickly. But if you have really granular information about the reliability in your particular area, or you have other questions just in general about the reports, you can always send an email to circuitreliability@scE.com. So that's definitely available to you. So now we'll move on to the questions as part of this particular session today. All right, so I'll do a call. I don't see any questions so far, but I'll give it a minute or so. So I'll give it a minute or two just to see if we have any questions on the presentation today. All right, so going once, going twice. All right, it doesn't appear we have any questions. I'd like to thank you all for attending our SCE 2023 Reliability Review, and have a good evening. Thank you very much.